I welcome you to this press conference on behalf of WCC communication team. My name is Freddy Dutz. I have the honor to present to you right now two of the people we have here. Bishop Brian Farrell from Ireland is the Secretary of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. And we have a Protestant sitting here from the UK. This is Reverend John Donald Naudé of the Ecumenical Disability Advocates Network, EDAN. I ask that we make our questions, please, really precise, because there are loads of There's people, even if it's just two, have to share, and if you are precisely answering, then that would help a lot. So please welcome to ask our participants what's burning on your heart.
I'm honored to be the question. My name is Elizabeth Lobulu from the ELCT, Ecumenical Disability Advocates Network. I would like to ask Bishop Farrell that the fact that there is a dialogue and negotiation and even agreement on the level on the international level, but at the level of the parishes, because I'm Catholic, we don't know what is happening.
Yeah.
Is there a reason, or is there a way of getting the information of what is going on? Because we can see that there's very close collaboration at the international level.
Okay, I'll try to answer, but it's a huge question for the churches. The whole question of reception, because at the international level we have people who are used to investigation and dialogue, and they seek to resolve all the age-old controversies that we still have. So they are successful at that. Perhaps we are not successful enough at bringing this into the wider community. Of course, one of the principal ways in which we have to do this is through education, through our seminaries, through our theological faculties, through our adult education, and so forth. The problem with a church that is so big is that people respond in different ways in different places, and there's no real coordination that can make everybody do something the same and at the same time. So it's a long process. It's like the growth of a tree. You have the roots, but now until it becomes a big flourishing tree, it's going to take a long time. I think we are helped in making the message real for our local communities by all those committed people in the church who understand that ecumenism is not something extra, it's not something secondary, but it is an essential task of the church in order to respond to Jesus. But they are not enough. We still need so many more people to be convinced that this is something to which they should be committed. I have no simple answer to say we are going to do this and everybody is going to be active and everybody is going to do what they have to. It's just a question of growth. It's a question of people to people and group to group, parish to parish, where we find priests that are aware and understand the importance of it. Then you have a flourishing ecumenical activity. But otherwise, we still have a lot to do, so much to do.
Thank you, Bishop.
You're welcome.
I have a very simple question, but I'm still curious how to answer. When you look at the conference so far, was there anything which was surprising for you? what you did not expect when you arrived here in Arusha to happen or to be said?
I think for me, one of the exciting things has been the inclusivity of disabled people in various aspects, but also actually, again, the desire to communicate the gospel, and reaching out to the margins and wanting to hear the voice. That to me has been exciting and something that's encouraged me as we've gone along through the week.
Well, I think a word that has been mentioned many times and which I really feel has been a reality in this conference is the word solidarity. Solidarity in the sense of great openness and great friendship and a willingness to just talk and then also the interaction between people comparing what they're doing, getting together to look at common initiatives, and so there's so much interaction in a deeply Christian spiritual sense that this has inspired me.
I have a question to you. We're talking about the margins, and we are also talking about who defines where and what the margins are. Now, you are in a wheelchair. Are you on the margin of something? And if so, of what are you on the margins of?
There's an internal question to that, and there's the external. The internal is that I wouldn't see myself as individually as on the margin, because I feel as a member of God's body that actually I'm an equal person created in God's image. But then there's the societal and then the church's response to disabled people, who I would say are on the margin. They are an unreached group, and they are also those who are in the church, I don't think, are viewed as an active member of the church. They're people we do things to. And therefore, if I think of the 1 Corinthians of the body of Christ, actually that the body itself is not functioning as fully as it can do until all those who are on the margin, all those different parts of the body are playing their part to enable the body to function fully.
So would you say that you are among, or that the marginalized people are the ones that are at the fences that's supposed to be called in?
I suppose in one sense, yes, because they are an unreached. And when I think of the power of the gospel, there's a huge amount of disabled people out there globally, not just in Tanzania, but globally, who don't know the good news of Jesus. And so they are, I wouldn't even say they're near the fence. They're sort of, a long distance away.
Outside.
A long way outside. And the church isn't doing much to actually reach out, to include and invite in.
Now, a general question. Would you say, looking at this whole conference, there are some issues which are important for you, which might have not been said or mentioned sufficiently within the last days? Something which should be set more on the agenda?
Well, I'll start. Well, I think the conference has been great. This is my third World Conference on Mission and Evangelism. Athens, Edinburgh, and now Arusha. And each one of them have been very special. Athens for me was an eye-opener in the sense that I had, if you wish, been educated in the traditional form of mission is ad gentes. You go to foreign lands and you look for people who need to be evangelized. And in Athens, I realized and began to reflect very personally that the mission is the healing of the spirit, which takes place in the far distant areas, but also right on our doorstep. It takes place in my own heart. So it was the beginning of a deeper understanding, I think, of mission. And of course, Edinburgh was very special because of the trying to revive the whole spirit of Edinburgh in 1910. But here, I think that my impression is that we have seen an immense willingness to face the challenges, and that people from all different denominations and backgrounds and historical burdens are coming together with the same kind of, I would even say, enthusiastic desire to respond to the challenges of mission today. And this, I feel, is very strong. If I had one small complaint, and it's probably because of my my deformation, which is that as a theologian, I miss more space for faith and order questions. But then again, you know, it's a decision you have to make when you organize a big event like this. How much of what and when. But in a sense, if you wish, something that I would suggest is that we have at least one session on faith and order.
May I ask directly back? What would be a typical faith and order issue? Would it be the importance of church within the mission, or what are you thinking of exactly?
Well, I'm thinking two things, really. Two important points that faith and order is pursuing. This conference would form an immensely solid framework for presenting and discussing the document Towards a Common Vision, the church. And I think also that if we are going to grow together more from all the various backgrounds, there is the huge question of differences that we still have on ethical questions. So the study on moral discernment that Faith and Order is doing, I think it would have been very interesting to present it, even though it's not concluded, but to know, for everybody to know, that Faith and Order is doing this work. That, I think, would have been very helpful.
Thank you.
What are you missing?
I found it really hard to answer because I lived in Malawi for 4 years, and there's an element of me that feels like I'm coming home, back to Tanzania, and so I don't feel like I'm just visiting. There's an element of coming back, and I feel like I'm trying to think what's missing. And Bishop talked about a journey, and I feel like the WCC and EDAN are again on a journey, and our relationship with the WCC has grown over the years, and it's an ongoing journey. So there's bits that, you know, we could say for disabled people are not perfect. Not that I think perfection exists in whichever continent we are, but actually the journey has been really exciting to see where that has gone from when EDAN was formed 20 years ago to where we are now, knowing there's further to go. So I don't know whether that truly answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Walking, praying, and working together will be the theme of Pope Francis' visit to the World Council of Churches. And I would like to challenge both of you to develop a little bit on these three words that for us also have been important over the last 2 years. And when we talk about walking together on an EDAN perspective, and of course the question is very obvious to you also, Bishop Farrell, how do you see the whole movement that led to the historic moment now next June?
Yes. Well, I think it's the result of a long development. You know that we have a very strong, the Catholic Church has a very strong partnership with the World Council, and we consider that in the ecumenical movement, the World Council constitutes an essential. I've often said if it didn't exist, we would have to invent it, because it's the only way in which we can have the opportunity to bring all the various churches together in a very solid theological and practical way. So again, these things take time to develop, but I would also say that Pope Francis has given us a new impulse, in the sense that he keeps telling us that we must not wait till we solve all the theological problems in order to stand together against the difficulties, or trying to overcome the difficulties of faith in the world today, of the Christian faith in the world today. So I remember shortly after he was installed as Pope, he said to Cardinal Koch, who's our president, and myself, he said, look, maybe I haven't read all the documents, but if there's something we can do, let's do it. In the sense that he's not somebody who doesn't know what the documents say, but he's not somebody who's going to be there just studying them. He wants to see the results. So he is giving us the impulse to reach out and to walk, work, and pray together, so that there is a huge Christian solidarity in the face of so many challenges. So I think this is the background for his willingness immediately to accept the idea of coming to Geneva, for example, to visit the World Council. Yes.
It can seem sometimes, I think, pedantic to say we shouldn't use the word walk, because it can be exclusive.
Yes, yes.
But again, I know that as a wheelchair user, I would prefer the word journey. But I also recognise actually that people in wheelchairs are a small proportion of the disability group in the world, you know, but we're easily identified because it's obvious. But I like the idea of journeying together, and I'm getting excited when I see the church of whatever denomination coming together to share the mission of God. Even when I think of the church where I come from in the UK, we seek to work with the breadth of the other churches in our town, because that's where we, I suppose, would say that's when the power of God seems to be really evident, because we're working together. And so, but that's been a slow journey, again, of us discovering the differences and trying to be gracious to each other in understanding the differences and not letting those differences be barriers.
Well, you've just launched a challenge. We have to change the word there. From
Who am I to tell Pope Francis what to do?
Is there something that both of you would like to add to the things that have been said, because they are really burning on your hearts?
I think for me and the representatives of EDAN, we have loved seeing the relationship with the WCC grow over those years, and how we have learned from each other and sought again to include disabled people more and more in the life of the WCC. And I see that from 20 years ago, when I was invited as a participant, not a delegate, and it felt very much like we were a token gesture at that point. And EDAN was formed out of that. But the voice of disabled people, again, globally, the fact that the WCC invites people with disabilities from around the world to share our cultural experiences and learn from each other, even within a group, is really exciting. But again, I'm excited at what's ahead, you know, and how that relationship is going to continue to grow.
Well, following on the ideas here expressed by John, the Catholic delegation here, as you know, is they're all very happy. They feel that this has been a very useful and enlightening conference, and they are in particular very happy that they have been able to participate as almost equal members, even if they are observers rather than delegates. There has been no difference. They have taken part in everything. I think that's kind of like a sign of what we are looking for in the ecumenical world. That, and I like to go back to this idea of Pope Francis. We must not use our differences to remain separate and not to work together. Well, we have done that for so long. We have used our differences. We have given them importance in order to stay separate. Well, if we can change that whole attitude and mentality, and I think that if you ask this group of Catholics who are here at this conference, they are clear that this is something, the wheel has turned, and they will go back and they will try to promote this and make it happen.